Grab your loom, a plastic needle, and some yarn. The top hole in the needle is called an eye. Plastic won't poke you. Pick up your yarn piece. If you turn it one way, the threads will become loose. You want to twist it the other way to make it into a sharp point. See how it's frayed at the top? We want to try and twist that together so that I can feed it through the eye of my needle easier. Once you've thread it through the eye of your needle, you can tie it loosely onto your needle. Sometimes really good seamstresses or weavers will just leave it loose, but I'm going to tie it so that it stays and I don't have to worry about the yarn falling off of my needle. Just once will do. You don't have to actually knot it unless you want to. It's on there tight. Now I am going to take my yarn and I am going to weave the very first weft piece. Here we go. Now see how my cardboard starts over my warp? So I actually want to start under my warp, opposite of the cardboard that I put on there. So I'm going to start, I think it's easiest if you kind of lay your yarn to the side rather than dangling in front of you. That way it doesn't get like caught up in the cardboard piece. There we go. Okay, so I went under the first one. I'm going over, then under, over, under, pulling it through, finishing the first row. Once I finish the first row, I'm going to pull my piece of yarn all the way through until I just have a tiny little tail on one side. Now with that tail, I'm just going to tie it right directly onto the warp string, just like you tie your shoes. I'm going to do a loop and then pull my end through the loop and pull it tight. I can cut off the end of that when I'm done with my weaving. I'm not going to worry about it right now. So I'm going to gently push the yarn all the way to my cardboard space saver. And I want to make sure not to pull it too tight. I don't want to bend the warp string. And I'm going to put on my next row. Remember, over, under, over, under. Now see how it kind of loops like a rainbow? And then I'm going to push it down. Oh, see how it draws if I push too hard or pull too hard? You definitely don't want that to happen. That's called a draw. We want to make sure that our yarn is loose enough so it doesn't pull, but also tight enough so it's not too loose. So I'm going to sort of pull it back through so it's still flat. And go around my end warp string and start my next row. A good way to prevent draw on the side is to sort of do your weft line up above and then see as it gets really close to pulling on that warp string, I sort of make a rainbow shape and then I just push it down and pull it just a little bit so that it's nice and flat. So remember the pattern is over, under, and then push down as you finish each row so it's nice and close to its neighbor. I'm going to go ahead and finish up this piece of yarn and then I'll show you how to switch colors. So I finished up my pink piece of yarn and I'm going to push it gently down, spread it out, get ready for my next piece of yarn. I'm going to cut it off of my needle, take the extra bit off. I can throw that away. Then take my next piece of yarn and I'm going to thread it into my needle just like I did before. I'm going to twist it together, make sure it's easier to thread. I'm going to tie it and then go to the end of my yarn, lay it side by side, the pink one, and do a gathered knot. You guys are expert knot makers by now. Pull it both through the loop and pull it tight. I have quite a tail left over, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it off so it doesn't mess me up. Throw those pieces away. And then looking at my weaving, I notice a bit of a draw. That means that it's sort of too tight, so the end warp pieces are tilted in. So when I go and make my next row, I'm going to use my finger to sort of keep the piece of yarn up. I'm going to try and make that rainbow shape. See that curved line? And then I'm just going to pull it down or push it down with my fingers. I'm going to try and weave a little bit more loosely to keep the draw from happening. So I'll add my next row. Keep that yarn out of the way. Pull it through. And then use my fingers to push it down a little bit. All right, so I will leave you guys to finish your weaving. Make sure once you're done that you return your needle. Those things get lost really easily. And I will come back and show you how to tie it off.